All right, we'll get this meeting going. Thank you all for being here this evening. Welcome to the May 13th, 2025 Development Review Commission. I'm Andrew Johnson. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to rendering final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, businesses, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Tonight on the Commission, we have to my far right, Commissioner Stephan Richter. Next to me, Commissioner Charles Redmond. And to my far left, Commissioner Robert Miller, Commissioner Linda Spears, Commissioner Rhiannon Corbett. And tonight with us from staff, we have Ryan Levake, Michelle Dalkey, Diana Kamensky, Karen Stovall, Chris Jasper, Robert Mancelillo, Lucas Jensen, Whitney Mayfield, Alexander Boxworth, Joanna Berry, and Jason Wolf. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, please fill out one of these cards and bring it up to Ms. Berry, and you'll be given up to 3 minutes to speak. That time will be monitored. Also note that the WebEx chat box for those joining us online is not monitored or moderated. All right, tonight on our agenda, we'll skip right to our consent agenda. Tonight we do not have any meeting minutes to consider. And so we met during our study session as a commission and decided on a consent agenda. I will read off the items on that consent agenda. If anyone here is here tonight wishes to hear one of those, or wishes to speak, I should say, on one of those items, please get my attention and we can pull that from the consent agenda. So first on the consent agenda is item 3B, which is the Chassis Siesta Office 2. Item 3C, which is Tempe Collision Center. Item 4A, Ulysses remodel. Item 4B, Radislavescu residence. Did my best on that one. Item 4C, Pecos residence. And item 4D, ADU build, Harvey residence. And item 6A, which is zoning and development code, text amendment. Okay, so our consent agenda will remain intact, and then we will hear items 3A and 5A. So can I get a motion for our consent agenda, Commissioner Richter?
Motion to approve consent agenda 3B, 3C, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, and 6A.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Richter. Is there a second?
Commissioner Redmond? The motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Redmond. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, and that passes unanimously. So the first item on our regular agenda is the Leo Tempe, item 3A. If the applicant would please approach, state your name and city of residence.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Nick Woods, now Wilmer 1 East Washington Street, and I represent Up Campus. I was here before you in November of last year with a zoning case, and you recommended approval. We did not have a DPR for you to look at. The reason that we were here for the zoning case was because we had a contractual agreement with the sellers, multiple sellers, that said we had to have the zoning in place by the end of last year, so the DPR was following. And although you recommended approval, you cautioned me not to come back here with major changes to what I showed you. And I promised you I don't practice law that way, and I certainly wouldn't do that to you. So tonight, there are no major changes, but there are some changes that actually I think are an improvement to the site, and I'll walk you through those. So again, it's the southeast corner of the intersection of University and Rural. The city approved a mixed-use development to the east of us at 18 stories, and then south of us, there's been an approved mixed-use development of 24 stories that was approved many, many years ago. And of course, to the north of us, there's a major shopping center, strip center. And one of the things we talked about was safety, crossing from the south side of University to the north side. That happens a lot today. And then, of course, you know, we have ASU, Novus campus, catty-corner to us, and ASU to the west. This is the site. You're all very familiar with it. Again, we have a gas station on the corner, and then we have a series of 3 different property owners, you know, with this project. And then to the south of us is the old railroad tracks. And in fact, they found some, just to the east of us, they found some very interesting artifacts, which we've included some protections within our project as well. The general plan, obviously, is mixed-use urban core, 65 dwelling units or more. The zoning, again, was approved by City Council in December of last year, and is currently MU4. Here is what we brought to you on the left side in November of last year, and here's what we bring into you on the east side tonight. There are really only 3 changes to the plan. One is we agreed to put solar on top of the roof deck. So if you compare the 2 roof decks from the left to the right, you'll see that there's solar panels covering 20% of the rooftop. In addition, between Tower 1 and Tower 2, on the left side of the screen, there was an open space with a pull-in. That was for garbage pickup and deliveries, etc. We've decided to enclose that. So if you take a look at the slides on the right side of the slide, in the site plan, you can see we've now put a roof. We've enclosed that area for pickup and drop-off and garbage pickup as well. And then we've added some trees and just changed a little bit of the orientation of the trees along University. Again, no changes with respect to the 14,000 square foot of retail that we have, all restaurant space. One of the things that, you know, I pointed out the last time was we have access curb cuts both along University as well as along Rural. We have pickup and drop off for Uber and Lyft and others throughout. Again, we're covering that area in the middle between the 2 buildings. And then where the curb cut is along University, we're going to install traffic signals on all 4 corners. The reason is that today there are a number of people who try and cross University, and they do it like Frogger, right? It's very dangerous. It's unsafe, whether it's pedestrians or whether it's automobiles. So we're going to actually install on our own nickel on all 4 corners traffic signalization. So cars coming on and off the site can either go left, they can go right, or they can go across to the shopping center across the street. We've actually reduced the number of dwelling units, and we've reduced the number of rooms. So again, it's another change, but actually it's a reduction in all of it. We've gone from 950 dwelling units basically to 786, and the number of rooms, bedrooms, because again, this is student housing, is reduced from 2,391 to 2,300. And then we have a different mix of studios of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and 4 bedrooms. The height hasn't changed, it's 20 stories. Our lot coverage is actually a little bit less at 49%. Our required parking is reduced because the unit count is reduced, but we're still at 0.35 parking spaces per bed. And again, we still have the 14,000 square foot of retail. The architecture hasn't changed. Our architect is here tonight, if you have any questions for him. But as you can see, we have a very enhanced corner. Lots of landscaping, but more importantly, we have lots of shade. We have the landscape balconies that you see there, really cool columns. but a really nice mix of design and elements and movement and articulation. And of course, you can see on the right the split between the two buildings. This is right along Rural. And again, you can see where the two buildings are, and I love what they did with, changing the extension of the closest building to you as it moves along the street. It has really nice movement, and it also, with the colors and things that are here, even changing colors during the daytime. This is the streetscape along University. As I mentioned, we have a huge setback from back of curb to the front of the building. The setback includes a detached sidewalk so that we have landscaping and trees between the sidewalk and the curb. And then we have a landscape island. So we actually split the pedestrian realm into two sides. And as you can see, we have covered outdoor dining areas with really nice, again, these columns that are kind of on an angle, the landscaping hanging from the balcony on the second level. But we have, lights on top and cover. So it's a really nice element and very inviting. And again, this is a very important corner because this kind of, moves you from the northern part into the southern part on Rural. This is looking along Rural itself. Again, you can see the same architectural elements, the landscaping, both at grade level as well as on the balconies, and again, covered areas for all of the outdoor dining on the restaurants. Shot at the corner, we will be installing this bus bay. And then the open area that you see here that, of course, has pavers. There'll be different types of modes of transportation. You'll have some scooters, you'll have some bikes, you'll have other things that will also be on this corner as well. Here's another shot. This would be along Rural. Again, you can see a little bit better inside of the restaurant, a little closer look at that streetscape and at ground level. We're adopting some of the International Green Construction Code elements that the city encourages. Again, I went through these with you the last time we were here. In addition, we've added 20% of the parking garage rooftop with the solar panels that I showed you. Some car sharing services like Zipcar, LED lighting. There'll be 50 EV charging spaces, which is about 5% of the total number of spaces. And then one of the things we're doing for the city is, the communication system that they have for fire, for police, and of course, public safety, and of course for the city, there's all these holes in them. Well, we're going to actually provide some space for free for the city on the roof of one of the buildings, whichever is chosen by the city, to put communications equipment up there for them. Again, making an enhancement. So we are okay with the stipulations and with the added stipulation itself. We will, of course, do a security plan for this project as we have with all the student housing projects I brought to you in the past. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for that? Commissioner Spears?
Just one question. Would you talk about the placement of the traffic control? Where exactly on this are the traffic controls going?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Spears, it is, so if you follow so starting at Rural, and if you follow the black asphalt, right, from left to right, it turns north. And then when it gets to a spot where it's for emergency vehicles, it turns right and goes through the parking structure. So as it comes out of the parking structure, it then turns north right along the farthest eastern boundary of the property. Mm-hmm. And that's where the traffic signals will be. The reason that we had to move it that way is that lines up across the street with the curb cut that's there.
So we're basically across the street from Trader Joe's.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. All four corners.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Miller?
Mr. Wood, thank you. It's a very nice project. Question though about your parking. Mm-hmm. In the narrative, there are a couple of mentions of walkability and talking about working with the idea of the city to get to a 20-minute city, that whole thing. Did you give thought to reducing the number of available parking spaces below what you have now, given the fact that you're in proximity to several different modes of transportation, and that a lot of your, probably a majority of your clientele are going to be ASU students who aren't really going very far, and to the point where they might not actually need cars, and so you could actually reduce either the footprint or the height of your parking structure and encourage people to get out of their cars and get into different modes of transportation?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Miller, that's a great question, and you're right. Right across the street, we have a station for light rail. We're right across the street from the university. The parking calc is driven by a number of things. One, of course, is you don't want to make a mistake and not have enough parking. And that ratio, that 0.35, 0.30, that's kind of the current standard throughout the country regarding the number of parking spaces you should have for student housing. And the third component is it's driven by your lenders and it's driven by your equity. The lenders don't want to get caught because they're the biggest investor when you think about it. And they want to have this, what is the acceptable standard nationwide. But that's a very good question.
Just a quick follow-up with that. There are other projects that are coming online at some point, adjacent to yours. Do you think, be amenable to the idea of actually leasing parking spaces if it turns out that most of your clientele actually aren't filling them, and that as additional properties become available, you might actually be able to create a separate profit center for that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Miller, that's a great point. In fact, that's being done today by the district, which is on Apache right off of Rural. We did that case about 10 years ago, and they parked it at one parking space per bedroom. So they're leasing space to everybody. So is that a possibility? Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And not only that, ASU's right there. You could, have student parking or campus parking or public parking for that matter. Yeah.
Yes.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Commissioner Richter.
Yeah, I do have a request. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the materials on the building, especially the parking garage, since both structures are very tall and large. We had this discussion last meeting about another large project we approved, so it'd be good to hear a little bit more in detail.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Richter, I think we have the materials board, and then our architect is here. So if you'd like to, if I may, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll have our architect come up.
Please.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Sachs. I'm with Well Design Studio. And I'd love the opportunity to talk about the materials. So starting at the base of the building, really we wanted to put the emphasis at the streetscape, at the pedestrian scale. So really putting really high impact materials at the podium. So we're using lots of glass, lots of metal panel, kind of that white tone that really defines the podium itself is architectural cast concrete material. And then even at the ceiling, at those bottom two levels, we have it's a metal wood look panel. So really kind of bringing that earthy tone to the podium was really a high priority for us. Moving higher up the tower, we're using what we call an acrylic material that we're really using in a number of ways to kind of create a lot of variety, a lot of texture, and a lot of rhythm in the facade. So there's this acrylic material that we're using that has a metal look, that has a striated kind of vertical grain look to it. And then we're also playing with the depth of it. So there's a lot of shadow, a lot of relief, and a lot of rhythm that we're trying to bring to the tower component of the project. The garage itself, we've actually worked with staff quite a bit since our last meeting to revise those elevations and really trying to bring the language of the residential towers to the parking garage. And I don't have a slide to show you, but it should be in the packet, where we're using really perforated metal in a number of ways to kind of replicate and play off of the rhythm of the towers themselves. So it's perforated because it needs to be for the natural ventilation of the garage, but we create some movement by kind of staggering in these relief zones and creating some texture and some fluidity to the design in those zones. And then even the frames around those zones are actually perforated metal itself. So playing with the color, the tonality, the density of the perforation itself really kind of create a unique rhythm to the parking garage. I think that covers the majority of the materials, but I'm happy to answer any particular questions you have.
The acrylic material, would you describe it as long-lasting and long-wearing?
So the material we're using and the manufacturer we're working with is a manufacturer out of Germany called Stowe. It's been around for 70 years. It's been used in the US for 45 years. The product itself comes with a 15-year warranty. And I think that if used in the right way, it is a long-lasting material. So if you're using the right manufacturer, the right installer, and for us, we actually want to panelize the facade, meaning it would be applied in a climate-controlled situation rather than people on swing stages installing it 20 stories up a building. So panelizing it can really control the finish quality much better than installing it in the field. And then just picking the right color tones and the right finishes and what altogether, we really think this is a durable building and a long-lasting material.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had a question on the acrylic as well. Is it painted or is it an integral color to the material?
It is an integral color. It will have to be maintained over time, but usually, at least the first 15 years or so, it's an integral color. At some point, like any other material, it needs to be maintained. It will need to be recoated somewhere down the line, but we expect a good solid 15 years before that would be needed.
Other questions for the applicants? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, if Ms. Stovall could present for the city.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Karen Stovall. Yes, I always do that, don't I? My name is Karen Stovall, Senior Planner. I'll just be brief because we did already go into a good amount of detail. So the site is located at the southeast corner of Rural and University. It is approximately 3.69 acres and was rezoned to MU4PAD TOD in December of '24. The application includes a DPR for site plan, landscape plan, and building elevations for mixed-use development consisting of 786 units and just under 14,000 square feet of commercial space. The applicant is proposing a development with 20-story buildings and one 10-story parking garage. The project would be accessed, as already discussed, by one driveway on Rural and then one driveway on University on the east end of the site. And additionally, there is one service driveway proposed on University for emergency and solid waste vehicle access to the site. On-site landscaping totals 67%. 36% of that is at ground level, and that includes a resident-only courtyard between the two buildings. The remaining 31% is provided on amenity decks on the second and 20th levels of the residential buildings and on the top floor of the garage. These are just images of the Tower 1, Level 2 and Level 20 landscaping, and Tower 2, again, Level 2 and Level 20, and the deck of the parking garage. Again, as discussed, the buildings are each 20 stories, approximately 237 feet high, Commercial uses are proposed on the first floor of the buildings where they face the street frontages with dwelling units and amenities on levels 2 through 20. These buildings have a mixture of textured and metallic EIFS panels and metal panels in shades of umber, tan, and gray. Keep going. And the parking garage, again, is 10 stories with vehicles screened by perforated metal panels that are colored similarly to the building. One more comment. There is a bridge that is provided at level 3 of the parking garage that crosses the drive aisle to connect to Tower 2. A neighborhood meeting was not required, and we have not received public input regarding this request. Staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions, and we've already discussed that condition number 16 to be modified during the study session. The applicant has reviewed the conditions and is in agreement with staff. I do want to point out, we had a question about parking. The PAD that was approved in December actually modified the parking ratio because the site is in the TOD. The TOD parking ratio is 0.75 spaces per bedroom, and that PAD reduced that to 0.35 spaces per bedroom. So again, using the PAD bedroom counts, that actually reduced the required parking from 2,140 spaces down to 979. So there has already been a significant reduction in parking approved through the PAD. And if the applicant wanted to further reduce the required parking, they would have to actually amend the PAD to change that 0.35 parking ratio. That is my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Redmond?
I think there's a question for you, and it's about the transportation plan. I'm well acquainted with the corner. It's commonly said that it's the worst corner in Arizona, the intersection of Rural and University, and it meshes over with 8th. I have an office across the street. I don't drive near there. This seems like you're going to pour out quite a bit onto those two streets. I mean, what does the transportation plan say?
So that is the primary reason, as well as pedestrian crossings, but that's the reason that traffic signal will be installed on the east end of the site, is because the traffic study, shows that the project will generate a large amount of traffic, and that's what the signal is there, to regulate.
And the rural exit doesn't require anything?
No. Mm-mm.
That rural exit, though, is right turn only?
It is right out.
Right out only, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right in, right out, yeah. More questions? Commissioner Miller?
Speaking of the TOD, there's a mention in there of the 20-foot setback requirement as per the TOD overlay district for the building, and this is not quite to that, I think. Is there any idea that you could ask them to conform to the 20-foot setback?
Are you referencing the maximum setback of the TOD? Because TOD actually has a 0-foot setback.
I saw something that referenced a 20-foot setback in the staff report. Now, if it's a one that actually is a 20-foot maximum, then they're fine. I was just curious about.
So the TOD does have a maximum setback between a public sidewalk and a primary building entrance. And the applicant along University, it's, I want to say 22 to 23 feet. So the code gives them an option of submitting an application for the zoning administrator to review and determine that the project is still in general conformance with the intent of the TOD. I believe that's what you might be referencing. We do believe that with the design of the project along University, having a 2 or 3 foot greater setback on University for a portion of the building is sufficient.
Okay. And then just following up on Commissioner Redmond's question regarding generation of traffic. It looks as though their traffic study suggests they're going to be having some significant impact on the number of trips that are generated at a couple of points during the day. Specifically, I think probably from about 8 to 10 and maybe from around 4 to 6, especially in the 8 to 10 time frame. How is that going to impact the overall traffic through that area since it's already fairly congested?
So for that question, I would need to get back to you. We don't have our traffic engineering reviewer here at this time, but I can, if you want to provide a detailed question, I can send that to him and we can get back to you with an answer.
Well, okay. I think the question is simply, what is the impact going to be on an area that's already heavily trafficked at certain times during the day? And you can phrase it in that question that way if you wish. I can also bring it up at the Transportation Commission if you prefer I do it that way.
That would be fine.
And Mr. Chairman, and perhaps you could ask the applicant to elaborate on that one too, that particular question.
Yeah, I have a question also that I meant to ask the applicant, and so we'll have them come back up. But are there other questions for staff? Okay, then I'll ask my question to you first. Sorry. So the solar panels are on the roof of the parking garage, and I think you had a good image.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My presentation.
Okay, so do you know exactly where the solar panels are located?
Yeah, it's over the pickleball court.
Over the pickleball court? Yeah. Okay. The parking garage is significantly lower than the surrounding buildings. Oh, there we go. Okay, couple the other direction.
Did you want me to go back? Or
Yeah, can you go back a couple more? There you go, right there.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're gonna get morning and midday sun on those panels. They are not gonna be very well utilized. I'm guessing that it was put over the pickleball court for shading purposes?
That is my assumption.
Might
but
be
I
a
have
better
to
shade
defer to
structure,
the
but yeah.
applicant to answer that question.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question over to the applicant, because I was just thinking about how those buildings are usually we see shade studies, and I don't remember seeing one, but that would show us how much sun these panels are gonna get, especially in the summer. They're gonna get very little generation out of those panels. But it's great to have shade on a pickleball court, so. All right, well, thank you.
Yes.
All right, we will open it up for public comment. Was there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? I don't have any cards from anyone. If you are here to speak on this, please get my attention. Okay, we'll invite the applicant back up to address a couple questions for us. Did you want to rephrase, Mr. Miller, or?
I think the question is fairly straightforward. The traffic study that was submitted suggests that there are two peak times for traffic impacting out of this site. Roughly, I'm going to guess 7 to 10, 7 to 9:30, something like that. And again, later afternoon, probably 4 to 5, 4 to 6, something like that. But with the greater impact being in the morning, this is a very busy intersection as it is. Are there concerns that there might be more traffic in there than is really handleable at that intersection, since we're getting very difficult right now, at least at certain times? And as Commissioner Redmond points out, it's probably the worst intersection in the state.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Miller, that's a great question and a great point. Several things are happening. Number one, it's a busy center right now with the gas station and others, so that goes away, so we're kind of, taking away some and then bringing others back. So there's a net effect, obviously. What was brought up to us by the Streets and Transportation Department was putting in that light on the east side. That alleviates a lot of the current traffic that would otherwise go through that intersection. The other thing is being student housing, right? You made a great point earlier, and that is, we're right across the street from, the university. We're right across the street from, a station for light rail. I'm not a traffic engineer, but we have our traffic engineer here. If you'd like to ask some questions of our traffic engineer. But I think, and I don't begin to understand traffic other than I hate it. But yeah, I think, again, it's a give and take. And with student housing, it's a heck of a lot better than market rate housing, because we know market rate housing really generates tremendous amounts of traffic.
And to follow up with that, you're right about market rate. It contributes more vehicular traffic, but in this case, when we're talking about student housing, it just struck me that you're also going to get an enormous amount of foot traffic coming out of those buildings, anywhere from, well, depending on when students want to take classes. If they don't want to take 8 o'clock classes, they're not going to be out too early, but there's going to be a lot of foot traffic going through there, and there's already significant amounts. Foot, bicycle, scooter. If you drive through there anytime at all, it's crazy. And it's going to be difficult to manage, and maybe that's something that you can work with the city on in terms of how to better signalize that intersection so that it maximizes the ability of people on foot, not only in vehicles, to get across and to get across safely.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Miller, you're right. Pedestrian, bikes, you name it, that'll be the the greatest amount of traffic that comes on and off. Cars, again, students very rarely use their cars unless they're, either it's the middle of summer and they don't want to walk, or, which we don't have here typically, or there's really bad weather, which again is an off time. But yes, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic and a lot of bicycles.
Need more bridge crossings, tunnel crossings.
There's been talk of that.
Yeah.
Bridges are cheaper than tunnels.
Other questions for the applicant? So solar panels. I saw another image that showed there might be more on the south end of the parking garage,
Yeah, if I could bring that up again.
not just the pickleball court. Are these tracking panels?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know if they have chosen a particular provider or type of panel.
Okay.
Yeah, so I apologize, I can't answer that question. If
Can you
bring up
can you confirm there's panels on that south side?
I'm sorry?
Can you confirm the panels are on the south side of the parking garage as well?
Yeah, if I can bring up the slide, I can show you exactly where they're located. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
As you can see, we have some on the north side and some on the south side.
Okay. All right, thanks for going through that. Appreciate it. Any other comments, questions? Okay. All right, with that, we will close out the public comment period and move to commissioner discussion. Happy to entertain a motion or have other comments. Okay, Commissioner Spears.
I move for the approval of PL 240345 with the change to condition number 16 as reflected in our pre-session.
Okay, there's a motion by Commissioner Spears. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Richter. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next up is, and the last item that we will be hearing tonight is item 5A, which is Marshall on Spence. Would the applicant please approach and state your name and city of residence? Yeah, thank you. You have to go far.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, members of the commission, Nick Wood, Snell Wilmer, 1 East Washington Street, and I represent Aptitude. This is phase 2 of one that was approved by the city about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago. So as you can see, it's the smallest student housing project that I've handled. And before that, the first phase was the then smallest student housing project that I've handled. And as you can see, the long rectangular site with the yellow border, that's the site we're talking about. And it's currently occupied by a very old apartment building that's there today. It's very long in the tooth and long lived its life. The original one that was approved is under construction today. And of course, it fronts on Apache. As most of you are aware, I've done many of the student housing projects along Apache. As you probably know, across the street, for example, on the north side of Apache, the first student housing project on this street was 922. 922 is just a property to the east of Rural and on the north side of Apache, and that was originally a condominium project. And it was converted during the Great Recession to student housing. Then I came before you with the next project east of that, and it's called the Carmen today. It was called the Rise back then, and that is 15 stories in height. There's another one right next to it to the east that's also 15 stories in height that's under construction. And then east of that is another one that we did, and that was for Gilbane, and it's called the Apollo. And that one is 90 feet in height, over 900 bedrooms essentially. And you know, the same thing with the Rise. The Rise was close to 900 bedrooms. Then along the south side of the street, if you go back to the intersection of Apache and Rural, on the corner is the pharmacy, the CVS, and then behind it is the Moxie Hotel. And I was here before you last year with that project, again, student housing, Gilbane, the same client that we had for the Apollo. And that one, again, it's a 90-foot tall building that did not include the CVS, so it's back behind the CVS. And then when it was 90 feet until we got down to Spence, and then we stepped it down to 5 stories and then down to 4 stories. East of that is the district. And the district, as I mentioned in my previous presentation, I did that zoning case, gosh, almost 10 years ago. And it was one of the first, ground up student-centric project in Tempe, and nobody knew how to park it. So as you can see in that huge, big wrap parking structure, it's parked at 1 parking space per dwelling unit, per bed, I'm sorry. So there's 900 units in that, and there's 900 parking spaces in that parking structure. And again, we started off with 90 feet along Apache, and then stepping it down to where we reach 4 stories along Spence. And then you move over to our project, the one we're talking about tonight. And again, it's the second phase of what's already under construction. And it starts with 7 stories on the north side, but then steps down to 5 and 4 stories, following the same design that we did to the west on both the district and then, of course, on what is currently the Moxie. This was a project that you approved almost 2 years ago. This is the one that's on Apache. One of the reasons I'm showing you this is A, we're talking about phase 2, but B, it talks a lot about Aptitude. Aptitude is a national student housing developer and operator. They manage their own properties, and as you can see, they really believe in quality materials, quality of design, and something that looks special, a lot of movement, a lot of articulation. great landscaping. Even at the pedestrian level, you've got a lot of stone and other things. And you can see along the sides that it moves back, we have the articulated, surfaces as well. So we followed that with respect to that kind of design as we move toward the south, as we did with the other two projects. The general plan was approved by the voters just last year in 2024. And a major change happened in this particular area, as you see in the dark gray. When we did the first iteration, the first phase, we actually had to do a general plan amendment because that was less than 65 dwelling units per acre. But what you've done this past year and all the work everybody did, this whole area on the north side of Spence, all the way up to the north, is intended to be more than 65 dwelling units per acre. The idea being, and this is really a policy that was adopted and advanced by City Council, is we want the student housing, right, really centered along Apache, along Rural, and down Terrace. So everything north of Spence, everything north of that, and everything east of that, basically we want that to be your taller buildings, your more dense use. But the good news is, because it's student housing, right, we get to take advantage of all the money that the city spent with respect to the light rail and with respect to the trolley. And of course the streetcar runs right along Apache. So one of the things we made sure that we were going to do with this project is connect them regarding the pedestrian access. Because again, this is the second phase. The zoning is, currently on the left is, CSS, and then along Spence is R4. So it's a dense multifamily. And we, of course, are doing MU4 PAD as our application. Again, it's a small site. We only have 105 units. It is the smallest one that we've done so far. But again, it's student housing. If this was going to be market rate apartments, it would generate a tremendous amount of traffic. But our ratio here is going to be pretty low. So we have 271 bedrooms, 21 studios, 10 one-bedrooms, 17 two-bedrooms, 27 threes, 25 fours, and just a handful of fives, which is more a function of the geometry of the site, which is very narrow. So the architect did a really nice job of designing it and working around it. Again, we start at 7 stories on the north, matching what's in front, and then stepping down to 4 stories along Spence. Lot coverage is 76%. Parking is 89, which is a 0.31 per bed, which is the same as the first phase. And commercial space, we have 120 square feet. Right now, we're looking at probably an ATM machine for a bank to go in there, which is pretty nice to have, especially with the kids. And all the students, around there as well. Site plan, again, you can see we have our access point along Spence. We have a fire lane that goes through. We have a double-loaded, drive aisles. One of the things that was brought to our attention by the neighbors is, when you look at the district, right, the district is 900 bedrooms. And there's 900 parking spaces, and they lease space, right, to others, as I mentioned in the earlier presentation. All of those cars have access to Spence, right? So all those cars, if they wanted to, could all go south to Spence. Well, there was a concern raised as to how much traffic can go out in Spence. So we've decided to actually, although we have a connection for automobiles as well as for pedestrians, to go through and connect to the first phase to the north and then out onto Apache, we're actually going to make that emergency access only. So none of the students who live in the north, right, can come down through the southern phase and out onto Spence. Again, trying to limit the amount of traffic that comes to the south. And that works out, really well. We've worked with both the fire marshal, we've worked with city staff, and everyone is very comfortable with that. As you can see, we have a mail room in our lobby, package room, bike room. As we've done with all the other student housing projects, we'll have a security plan, right, with the Tempe Police Department. We have visited, because Aptitude manages their own project. We visited with Dr. Rund and Drs. Vogels to make sure that there's a relationship between the management company as well as with ASU. Landscape plan, lots of landscaping, especially out along Spence, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that on the next slide. But we put quite a bit of trees along the side and bushes as well. Again, they do a really nice job with respect to the architecture. A lot of different colors, but colors that work well. Matt Salinger, who lives a couple miles to the east, is an architect, and he took a look at this and said, you know what, I've got some ideas for you. So we've incorporated some of those. For example, that blue metal on the top, we didn't have that originally, but it creates a really nice visual and a really nice feel. As you can see, we go from the 7 stories down to 5 and then down to 4, but we even have movement back and forth, and the colors, I kind of like these colors as they blend together. As you can see, we've got landscaping and trees, but it's a very narrow site, obviously. The other thing is, because this has a southern exposure, the architect put some fins along the outside of the windows, which I really like, because as the sun comes up from the east and then travels across, it's nice to be able to stop some of those rays from hitting the panes themselves. Here's another shot. You can see the articulation and the movement and different colors in the metal on the east exposure that you see here. One of the things that we did is we moved the building way back from the street. The other buildings, when we did the district and when we did the Moxie site that's on the corner, they're pretty close to the sidewalk. This one we moved back for several reasons. Number one, again, we wanted to not be leaning on the street, but in dealing with and working with the fire marshal, they asked us if we would also move it back and then create some space here so that they can actually pull a truck onto the site rather than parking in the street. Their concern was, is if we have to park in the street and we can't pull up on the curb, then we're blocking a lane of traffic. So the idea here is we'll go ahead and create more space, which gives fire, if they ever have to come here, a larger place for them to sit. We're incorporated some of the green construction code elements as we typically do. We'll also make sure that, although we don't have a lot of parking spaces, some of them will be EV parking spaces. And what's happening with really not just student housing, but even market rate housing, we're adding quite a few EV accessible type parking. Like, I've been driving a Tesla. I'm on the second one for the past 10 years. And I like the fact that, basically, the client is doing that. So we've worked well with staff as usual, and they recommend approval. And we're happy with all of the stipulations that they're proposing, for both the zoning itself as well as the DPR. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for the applicant? I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Was there any thought to allowing northward movement from the southern parking garage to the northern property only? Because I could think of, that could help reduce the amount of vehicles going onto Spence. So if they were allowed to come in from Spence and then exit up to Apache, I could see that being a need or a want. If they could move northward only through that division. I don't know if that's possible or if it was a thought.
Mr. Chairman, that's something that we can entertain, I think. In thinking about it, I'm just thinking out loud with you. Mm-hmm. Everything along Apache is right in, right out because of the streetcar. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure. So if cars went up north through the site, the only thing to do is turn right on Apache, right, which means it would take them down to Terrace.
Right, but you're getting onto Apache rather than getting onto Spence.
Exactly.
You're avoiding the neighborhood and getting onto a main road. They're students, so they're less likely very often to go east. Unless they want to get on the freeway or go to Arizona Mills.
It's something for us to consider. Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Miller?
You indicated, I think, that there are plans for pedestrian access out of the site through Phase 1 up to Apache.
Yes.
I'm assuming you're thinking that that's going to be a major point of egress for most of your residents if they're going to ASU, that rather than go down Spence and then up, they're just going to go straight out to Apache and then do that.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Miller, yes.
Okay, so that'll alleviate a lot of the pedestrian traffic anyway. Spence is a narrow street, so.
So is that pass through that sidewalk kind of open to the public? Or
Mr.
is it
Chairman,
restricted?
I don't think so. Let me ask.
Okay,
Is the sidewalk? No, it's not open to the public.
okay. So it'd be residents only. Okay, do you see the gate there? Okay, yeah. A little hard to see. Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. And we'll hear from staff now. Mr. Jasper.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
No, that's perfect timing, actually.
Well, good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Chris Jasper, Senior Planner, City of Tempe Planning Division. I'll be doing the presentation tonight. So what we have before you is a zoning map amendment from CSS and R4 on 2 split-zoned lots to MU4 with a planned area development overlay and a DPR for a 7-story mixed-use student housing project. So existing conditions include the Tempe Palms apartment complex, as noted by the applicant. This was constructed in 1970. Currently includes about 38 dwelling units with surface parking on the north side of the apartment complex. As the applicant noted, this development does include some unique characteristics, such as an emergency-only vehicular connection to the Marshall at Tempe, which is currently under construction, as you were able to see on those aerial images. Included with that is a cross-refuse agreement, so refuse will be, collected on site in, identified refuse areas and then moved to the site to the north to be collected by our solid waste division. So that's where it will ultimately be staged and picked up, is on the site to the north. So that means there will be no trash trucks going in and out of this particular development. Some notes about the landscape plan. There is a required landscape buffer on the west side of the development adjacent to the Muse single-family residential development. So there is a row of trees on that west side. The applicant also was able to meet our street tree requirement despite the relative narrowness of the lot. They were very communicative and adaptable to make some of the landscaping requirements in that space work. As the applicant noted, the parking is located on the interior of the building on a ground floor and mezzanine level with a ramp that goes up to that second floor. Amenity spaces are located on the west side of the building in sort of recessed spaces. And as the applicant noted, there is a step back that occurs on the bottom of the 5th floor and 6th floor to help break up the massing as it faces Spence Avenue. We did request a more significant step back, but our fire department did have some aerial access requirements that necessitated a 5-foot step back at each level. So this was about the maximum step back that we could obtain while meeting fire code requirements. The primary facade facing Spence Avenue features, masonry that is consistent with what was approved on the Apache, the Marshall on Apache to the north. In addition to, these sort of fin shades around the fenestration that faces that south area. And again, there are those step backs on the 5th floor with some private amenity spaces for residents, and then a further step back on the 6th floor where the facade is further broken up with that metal element. So the east elevations and west elevations, you can see the screened parking areas, as well as the amenity deck areas. The applicant already showed the rendering, so I won't spend too much more time on it. I'd also note that the EFIS wood finish materials was also present on the Apache at, the Marshall on Apache to the north, and so there's a continuity of both materials that traverse both of these projects. So there was a neighborhood meeting that was held on February 26th, 2025 at the Moxie Hotel. There were approximately 10 to 12 residents that were in attendance. There were some concerns related to the density of the project. So that's about 120 dwelling units per acre, the height of the building as it relates to surrounding developments and buildings. And there were some questions about impacts of traffic on Spence Avenue. And there were also some questions about the status of residents in the existing Tempe Palms apartment complex. There were some residents who did express support for the project and were happy with new investment in this neighborhood. We did receive one letter of opposition, which identified some concerns associated with the height and the number of vehicles exiting onto Spence from the garage. So staff's recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. We have our two fairly standard conditions related to archaeological monitoring for new zoning projects. So those are conditions number 4 and 5 of the zoning. And we do have what has become more of our practice for projects that have lower parking quantities or parking ratios. So we are looking for collection of data over the first 4 years of operation, identifying the number of employee permit parkings, any guest or customers parked per year, cost of parking for residents, et cetera. So this was a condition that was also applied to the project to the north. So we're collecting data on both sites. There was an additional non-standard condition related to the cross-refuse configuration, ensuring that there is a cross-refuse agreement and that all solid waste operations occur on alternating days so as not to overwhelm our solid waste personnel. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Are there any questions for staff? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to pause, and we'll do the public comments, and then we'll invite you back up to speak.
That's fine. It was an answer to your question about traffic going north through the building.
Oh, okay. If you want to
Yeah.
address that, please.
Mr. Chairman, I checked with the boss, and yes, they would be willing to have a stipulation to allow traffic to go north through the building out to Apache, but not south.
Okay,
So, yeah,
great. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think it was a good idea. Thank you.
All right. So if anyone from the public is wishing to speak, please fill out one of these cards and bring it up to Ms. Berry. I do have one comment card. Christian Curry, if you can come up, restate your name and city of residence.
Good evening, commissioners and Mr. Chairman. For the record, Christian Curry. I'm a resident of Tempe Microestates, just south of the project, here today in opposition as it relates to the parking situation. When it comes to the connecting point, I did want to note that I in full support of it going north, but how do you keep cars from coming southward? We're talking about students who sometimes like to cut corners. I was a student, you were a student at one point. Kind of what's that means of keeping cars from coming back to the south side? Overall, my concern is with regards to the parking situation. I think a 0.31 ratio is significantly small for Spence Avenue. You're talking about a pretty significant increase in traffic when it comes to that. Right now, the developer and their representatives and team really have been kind of batching in this second phase with everything that's on Apache Boulevard. But I think what we failed to remember is that Apache Boulevard is a significant street that can handle a lot more traffic and therefore, also handle a less lesser parking ratio. This really is the first project on Spence Avenue that's being approved at a 0.31 ratio. The other project, which was the district, was approved at a 1-to-1 ratio, and we have not had any issues because it's such a large project with a lot of parking at the very far end of the street. Right now, I have to get onto Spence every single day, and I'm dodging the truck. I'm dodging trucks, I'm dodging construction vehicles, I'm dodging the bus. Orbit makes its way through there. There is some parking on Spence Avenue. This project, I know that they say that there's not a lot of cars that this will introduce, but when you do have student housing like this is the first one may introduce parking onto all the neighboring streets, on Rita Lane where I live, on Spence Avenue, on all the surrounding streets. That's been one of my big concerns with that. I do thank Mr. Woods and the team for mentioning the district and that the fact that they have overparking. I think this actually does go to show that the other projects all along Apache Boulevard have actually been approved at such a low standard or such a low ratio that you have people from all of those different projects that are now actually parking over at the district because the district has additional parking. So I think that's a larger issue to think about too as you guys look to approve this project. Those are my main concerns, again, with it being the fact that this is really the first project on a small street. Commissioner Miller, you had mentioned on multiple occasions, both in the study session and here, your concerns with parking. And I think that you brought up some significant issues that do need to be addressed before this project moves any further. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr. Anyone else wishing to speak tonight? Okay, with that, we'd like to invite the applicant up to.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Miller.
I'm sorry. I have a question for Mr.
Mr. Curry, if you don't
Yes.
mind, we've got a question for you.
Sorry. Sir, you had mentioned the issue of parking and the concern of potentially having, I guess, residents who don't have space parking on Spence. Is that currently an area that's designated as a, what are they, permit zone?
Yeah, and I'm happy to provide you with more information on that. So Spence Avenue, as for the majority of Spence Avenue, is a no parking 24/7 on both sides. As you get closer to Terrace, there is 2 areas I call green zones where you can park. Those are full, whether it's 6 a.m., middle of day, or 10 p.m. at night. We actually have people who park on the no parking side as well, which really creates just a single little corridor for cars to kind of squeeze through. And then you have the permit parking, which is on all of the north-south streets. Those do also get filled because it's a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. permit parking. After 6 p.m., it's whoever wants to go grab those spots can.
Perhaps you could work with if there becomes an issue, you could work with the city to introduce permit parking and extend the hours, because that sometimes works around elementary and secondary school sites. So it is a potential way of addressing that. So anyway, that's something to think about. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, the applicant would like to respond.
Thank you. If I could have the presentation back up, thank you. So we spent a lot of time, obviously, because just like the other 2 projects are against Spence, we spent a lot of time to see
Is
where.
this the presentation that you wanted to see? Okay.
It's okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. So one of the things we did was we looked at a number of, here we go. So this was our traffic engineer's report. And we talk about the number of trips in and out, both at AM peak and PM peak. That, of course, will change now, Mr. Chairman, because we're going to agree to the stipulation that would allow cars to go north out to Apache. And I think your point is if they're going to go to the freeway or any place else, go to work, then obviously that will cut this number down, but it's not a lot. That being said, I have a drone, and I use it a lot. So one of our land planners, we have 5 land planners, she went out and she took a shot of this, and for whatever reason, it's not working. Oh, there we go. So this is in the morning on the 16th of last month. And essentially, you can see the traffic along Rural, which is significant. Of course, it's a lighted intersection. There's a left turn lane. So this is on the west side of Rural, looking to the east. You can see where the Moxie is on the other side, and then, of course, beyond that is the district. And she's in that little white car there controlling this thing. But as you can see, there's not a lot of traffic in the morning. And again, with the left turn pocket, as well as the right turn pocket, in order to go through, traffic moves pretty well. And again, and that's with the 900 beds that are right there in the district itself. And we can run it a little bit further. Every once in a while, a car may come out of there, but that's out of 900. And then we did it again at night or during peak time in the afternoon, right? And usually people are going home at this time of the day rather than, coming out. So you see there's not as much traffic on Rural during the middle of peak time, right around 4:30, between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. But then we also took a look at parking, right? What you see here is all the red dots, and we are where it says Tempe Palms Apartments. So if you go way to the left side, going down Spence, we have the Moxie, the district, then that piece, and then we're right there where it says Tempe Palms Apartment. So you can see there's no parking signs all the way up and down Spence, and you can see where the permanent parking is with those little blue dots. So there's really no reason for our residents, right, to park out on the streets. And even if they wanted to, there isn't much space for them to park, essentially. So we took a look at all of those things as well. But the best part is, as I mentioned, this is not a commercial site, this is going to be residential. It's either going to be market rate apartments or it's going to be student housing. If there's a concern, I met Christian for the first time here, and I actually saw him down at the legislature too. He's a great guy. So either we end up with student housing, which we know does not generate much traffic, or it's going to end up being market rate apartments. Nothing else would go here. And it's replacing existing apartments. So when you look at the traffic, we're also displacing existing units that generate traffic at a rental rate, not as a student housing rate. So with that, again, I think it's a great project, great developer, one who has a track record of doing what they promised to do. Mr. Chairman, your idea of letting them go north through the northern phase, I think, is a great idea. We'll agree to a stipulation to that. And with that, I hope that you recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant? No? Okay. All right, so with that, we will close out the public comment period, unless there's anything from staff additional. Okay. We'll close out the public comment period and commissioner discussion or motions. Commissioner Richter.
I'm particularly comfortable with the number of units and the amount of traffic that the property will generate, and the fact that it's pretty much in line with phase one. So unless somebody else has comments, I'd like to make a motion for approval.
I was just going to add, I think that there's already existing market rate apartments there. I'm not sure the occupancy of them, but I'm sure there's already some traffic generated from there. It seems like maybe the student housing will offset a little bit with the traffic that's already there.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments? Motion?
Motion to approve PL 240473.
Did you want to add that really good idea?
Sorry, with the amendment of allowing this project to access Apache north through the existing property.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table, and is there a second? Second. And seconded by Commissioner Spears. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, and that passes unanimously. Okay. With that, were there any commission member announcements? Nope. Okay. City staff announcements.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder that the joint DRC City Council meeting is coming up on Monday at 4 p.m. at the Tempe History Museum. We hope to see you there. And then we will see you on June 10th at the next DRC meeting.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and we are adjourned.